Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We're ready.
ISS National Lab, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call Station for a voice check.
Station, this is Patrick O'Neill. How do you hear me?
Patrick, this is the International Space Station. I hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. Well, Jonny, thank you so much for joining Between a Rocket and a Hard Space, the official podcast of the ISS National Lab. I mentioned to our listeners that you launched to the space station just last week. So the obvious question to start would be, what are your initial thoughts and reactions to living on board the space station?
Patrick, thanks for having me. I don't think I have enough time or the words to fully articulate how amazing the experience has been so far. The ride up was thrilling. It was mesmerizing. I think the memory that's going to stick with me the most is actually a piece of advice a friend of mine, Anne, gave me. And she said, don't forget to look out the window, especially for the maneuvers on final approach, and you get to see the space station. And I remembered that, and I looked outside that window and I saw the International Space Station in all of its metallic glory. And it was awesome. Being on the space station has been a really thrilling experience. It's also been a lot of learning. And the first few days took a lot of adjusting. And I'm still getting adjusted to life on the space station.
So if I could lean a little bit more into kind of that adaptation process, I think to put it mildly, space is known to be pretty harsh on the body. So can you maybe talk a little bit about your acclimation process to the space station?
So the first one for me, really the one that affected me the most was mostly the neurovestibular system. So as you know, when we're on Earth, we have gravity and we have a really amazing organ inside our bodies called the vestibular system. And we have these semicircular canals in our ears that tell us which way is up, down, left, right, and it detects acceleration. Well, in microgravity, we don't have that same ability. So our bodies are really confused as to what our new environment's about. And I can tell you my brain was very, very confused. And the best way I'd describe it was it felt like constant motion sickness for the first 72 hours. It was an amazing experience. You get to see an amazing view. You're having fun, but at the same time, you're trying to get over this motion sickness. But it's also amazing how the body and the brain it's so plastic and it recognizes, hey, I'm not on Earth anymore. I'm in a new environment, and the brain just has a really neat way of rewiring itself. And by each day I was feeling better. And now I feel mostly my normal self, just happen to be in a microgravity environment.
Well, we are happy to hear that you are pretty much fully acclimated and out of the space environment and focused on the task at hand. With that in mind, too, one of your fellow crew members will soon be leaving. That's Don Pettit. And he is set to turn 70 years old next week. A lot of the work that we do on station is evaluating your own bodies as test subjects. Can you talk about how the microgravity environment has impacts on the human body from a science perspective, and maybe how that could be useful not only for NASA, but also for the biomedical community?
Yeah, space can be rough on our bodies, and NASA has been in the business of human spaceflight for decades. And so fortunately, we've learned some of the detriments to the human body that occur in microgravity. One of the big ones is musculoskeletal changes. So we all know muscles atrophy. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And the same thing happens with bones. We have an amazing device on board called the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device. We call it ARED for short. And it's able to give a load of up to 600 pounds on a barbell so that you can do a lot of compound movements to kind of counter the atrophy you might otherwise have. Later today, I have an eye exam called OCT. And what that does is it gives really intricate, detailed slices of imaging of my retina. which is the back part of my eye that feeds a lot of blood vessels and nerves so that we can all see. And so one of the interesting things that happens in spaceflight is a syndrome called space-associated neuroocular syndrome. We call it SANS for short. And it's still up in the air on exactly what might cause this, but it's associated with microgravity. And so the study I'll be taking part in later today helps examine, provide some data points on how we might be able to counter this. All of this is very, very essential if we want to be a spacefaring species and go really, really deep for deep space exploration missions that are going to be very long duration.
Fantastic. That's it's very insightful. Much has been made about your diverse and exciting background as a Navy SEAL to a medical doctor to now an astronaut. But now that you're on station, can you maybe describe how astronaut training differed from what it is that you're now experiencing firsthand? Is it similar to like the differences of, say, medical school versus working in an ER, or similar to the experiences of training in the military versus performing actual missions?
You know, human spaceflight is a very human-centered business, and all those different experiences that you talked about, the common thread between all of that is people and teams and close-knit teams. High-performance teams, whether it's in the emergency room or in a research setting or on the International Space Station, they all have one thing in common, and that's the ability to work harmoniously with your crewmates. And that takes not only hard skills, but soft skills. And I would say the training we've had so far prepares us for that. One of the first things that I kind of felt, you know, obviously this is a very new environment for me. We have great simulation back at Houston to help train us for this, but we also do leadership outdoor missions. We partner with NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School. And I was amazed to find how similar those wilderness type of experiences where you're in rough environments and you have to lean on your teammates for help. And it's the same thing here on the International Space Station, where we happen to be in a pretty extreme environment, doing our best to share our experiences with the Earth and do amazing science.
Fantastic. And, you know, maybe a quick follow-up. I mean, obviously, you know, there's a lot of emphasis on teamwork, but, you know, looking specifically at like some of the skills that you've learned over the years, how do you think, you know, what it is that you have learned can be valuable for this crew and for your mission in particular?
It's a great question. I'd have to say communication. I fully believe clear communication is kind communication. And the best high-performing teams I've seen have always had excellent communication, whether it's in the form of body language or their verbal cues. And that's what a lot of the training we've had teach us to do. And so over the years, I've had varied experiences, but they always required precise communication between our teammates. And so I'd say that's probably one of the most important things.
Well, as a communication professional on this end, that is my love language right there. So that's fantastic to hear. Maybe also focusing though on your medical background and training. You know, as someone who has, you know, literally trained to provide care for and heal people, how exciting is it to know that you'll be working on biomedical research on station that could have wide-ranging impact or wide-ranging you know, positive effects for anything from even osteoarthritis to possible cancer remedies?
I mean, it's a great feeling. You mentioned something that I think everyone on Earth can identify with, and that's cancer, right? I mean, we humans live beautiful but short lives, and sometimes they're cut even shorter because of disease. And the research we do on the station not only helps provide the science community a lot of data for varied experiments, from fluidics research to the human body, but also pharmaceutical research. One of my more favorite ISS experiments that provided really clear benefits is research into the cancer drug known as Keytruda. Now, Keytruda is a drug used to treat certain types of cancers. And there was an experiment on the space station to see if we could use microgravity to create a more efficacious drug. And we were able to do that. And that provided data to the ground on manufacturing ways that might be able to replicate the microgravity process we have up here to create a drug that is more potent and helpful to patients. And that kind of stuff is things that mean a lot to us and mean a lot to NASA.
Fantastic. Yeah, the ISS National Lab was proud to sponsor a lot of those investigations with that particular Keytruda investigation. So exciting to see how that could have impacts for patients here on Earth. Now, that was kind of in the past, but maybe are there any projects that you're particularly interested in being involved with during your time on station?
I'd say the one project, there's a lot of projects I'm very interested in. I'm really interested in the Cipher project. I'm happen to be one of the study subjects for that. And I think what interests me most about Cipher is the really data-driven and data sharing approach NASA and our international partners are taking with this study. So as we know, the Kelly twin brothers study provided a lot of great data and a lot of answers, but also created just as many questions, if not more. And our approach with our international partners has been, we need more test subjects. We need a higher N. And that's what Cipher does. And I'm proud and excited to be a part of that. And hopefully that provides a lot of information, again, so that we can support future human space flight.
Awesome. So each day, it's a lot. I mean, being an astronaut is very highly regimented when you're on the space station, long and intense days. Can you maybe walk us through what a day in the life of an astronaut is like on the space station?
Okay, well, take this with a grain of salt. I've only been on the station for 6 days. But so far we've had, they got to give NASA credit. They put us to work pretty quickly. So a lot of it is working. We have a morning conference. We typically have time in the morning to do your typical morning routine, brush your teeth, get some breakfast, have a morning conference. And then we have a schedule that we call Optimus, which lays out all the different maintenance procedures or science experiments that we're going to help conduct. And so we follow this timeline of procedures. During that time, we're going to have a chance to exercise. Exercise is really important to our health on board the station. We have time to eat. And at the end of the workday, they're long work days. We have an evening conference, and then we get together as a crew and break some bread over our makeshift dining table. And get some sleep, answer some emails, maybe call home if we have time, and then repeat the process.
Sounds like a pretty busy day if you ask me. So, speaking of intense spacewalks, so we've all seen the movie Armageddon, and we've seen Ben Affleck preparing for walking in space when he's in the large pool, which is actually a real thing with the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. Can you maybe talk about training for a spacewalk and any idea when your first one might be?
Training for a spacewalk on the ground is probably one of the most fun and challenging things that we do as part of our astronaut training leading up to space flight. And so, as you mentioned, it is in the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, which is one of the largest pools in the country. And not only is it training in the water, but it's a lot of training and study on how to use the various equipment and the procedures, because safety is our number one priority when we do a spacewalk, which is arguably one of the more can be one of the most risky things that we do. And in order to mitigate that risk, we study extensively all of our procedures and techniques. So we are preparing for an EVA later this month, and potentially, and I'll be supporting as an IV. And so what that means is I'll be on the inside of the space station with Takuya, one of my fellow astronauts, and we'll be supporting the 2 spacewalkers who will be doing this mission. There are potentially some other spacewalks in the fall. It's not clear who will be doing that, but I'm sure any of us will be supporting in some way, and I'm looking forward to that.
Well, we are always looking forward to it because it's so much fun to go out there and watch people literally be in space, trying to do the work and make sure that the station maintains its viability. So that's fantastic. One of the things that's part of our podcast is we have a bit of rapid fire Q&A to help give our audiences a bit more insight into our guest. And obviously we want to be mindful of time for today's conversation. That said, keeping kind of with the movie flow, life often imitates art. Are there any movies that inspired you or pushed you to where you are right now as an astronaut living and working on the space station?
Oh, yeah, I like a lot of, I'd be remiss if I did not mention Gattaca, which I don't think is actually really a space movie. It was the first time I watched this movie, I was, I think, a junior or senior in high school, and Mr. Gon, my science teacher, who I'll remember, loved this movie, and he showed it to us, and most of the kids weren't very interested, but I was captivated by this movie. I really think I think the reason why I love this movie so much is that it's a very recognizable story of human struggle and human ambition. And it touched and it talked to my soul in a really deep way. And that movie has always stuck with me. But again, it happened. I think space is more of a background type of thing in that movie. I loved The Martian and Interstellar. Those were 2 movies that also happened to come out right around the time that I had applied to be an astronaut. So, I mean, I'm sure it gave me some ideas and inspiration for space.
So I'm not gonna lie, Gattaca might be one of my favorite movies ever too. So that's fun to hear. So one more question, I think, and then we'll let you go for the day. But this year marks 25 years of continuous human presence on the space station. What does that mean to you? And what do you hope the legacy of the space station will be whenever it is officially retired?
I hope people very far from now will look back at this time period that we had the International Space Station, and of course remember just the amazing collaboration that many different countries can have to create what I believe is one of humankind's greatest achievements. But I also hope that people in the future will remember the legacy we leave behind in the pursuit of science and exploration, and all of the real world benefits that the space station has brought back for the people we love on Earth. That's what I hope people remember.
Fantastic. Well, Jonny, thank you so much. This has been great to have you on today's podcast, and we wish you nothing but the best with your mission. And again, thank you for all that you and the rest of the crew are doing.
Patrick, I had a lot of fun, and thank you for having me on. And goodbye from the International Space Station.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Thank you.